Based programming. Here we are telling the introduction to prototype based programming. In prototype based programming is a style of object oriented programming in which behavior reuse, known as inheritance, is performed through a process of reusing existing object via through delegation that serve a prototype. This model can also be known as prototypable, prototype oriented classes and instances based performing delegation in a language feature that supports the prototype based programming. Okay. In prototype object oriented programming use generalized object which can then be concatenated and extended using a fruit and an example. If we take an example, fruit object will represent the properties and functionality of the fruit. In a general, a banana object will be called from the fruit object and will be extended to include general properties specific to the bananas, each including banana object and colon banana class. Compare the class based paradigmic when a fruit class will be extended by banana class. Okay. Next is the first prototype oriented programming and a self developed by David Ungan and Renal Smith in mid 1980s. Okay, since the late 1990s, the classes paradigmic has grown increasingly popular. Some current prototype oriented languages are JavaScript and etc. Flash, ActionScript, LoX, Anily, Newton Script, Loki, Move, Rep, and Lecasa AHK. Design and implementation. Prototype is the inheritance in JavaScript is described as Douglas. You can make prototype object and then make new instances. Objects are mutable in a JavaScript, so we can augmented the new instances giving them new file and method. This can be act as a prototype even newer object. We don't need classes to make lot of similar object inherit from objects. Advocates of a prototype based programming argue that it encourages the programmer to focus on a behavior of some sets of example and only later worry about classifying these object and archetypal objects. Many prototype based systems encourage the iteration of a prototypes during runtime, whereas only few classes object based systems such as dynamic oriented system Python, Ruby, Smalltalk, Common Railway Line, Objective C also are classes be alerted during the execution of a program. Okay, almost all prototype based systems are based or interpreted dynamically typed language. The Omega language discuss a prototype based programming in an example of such a system through according to Omega's website. Even Omega is not excessively static, but rather its compiler may choose to use static binding where this is possible and may improve the efficiency of a program. Object construction in a prototype based language that are no explicit classes. Object inherit directly from other objects through a prototype property. The proper prototype property is called prototype is self and JavaScript in a proto. There are two methods of constructing new object creation through cloning an existing object. In classes based language, a new instance is constructed through a class constructor function, a special function that reverses a block of a memory from the object member properties and method and returns the references or to the that block. System that support Xnicol object creation allow new object to create for the scratch without cloning. Cloning refers to the process whereby a new object is constructed by copying the behavior of the existing object. It prototype the new object that carries all the qualities of a original. Delegation in a prototype based language that languages that use delegation, the language runtime is capable of dispatching the correct method or finding the right piece of the data simply by following a series of delegation pointer. All that it required to establish a behavior sharing between object in a delegation pointer. A such child object can continue to modify and amend over without rearranging the structure of its associate prototype. As is a classes based system, it is also important to note that only data but also methods can be added to change. Okay. Con- concanish- concatenation session. In concatenative prototyping, the approaching implemented by Kenovo programming language that there are no visible pointer or link to the original prototype from which an object is cloned. The prototype object is copied rather than the link. There is no delegation. As a result, change of prototype will be reflected in a colon. The main conceptual difference under this arrangement is that changes made to be prototype object are not automatically propagated to the colons. In simplicity implication, concatenative prototyping will have faster member lookup than delegation based prototyping. System with delegation based prototyping can use coaching to speed up rather than there being a single slot pointing to the parent object. More sophisticated implications can avoid their problems, however, although trade-offs between speed and memory are required. Criticism and advocates of class-based object models who criticize prototype-based system often have concerns similar to concerns the proponents of static type systems for programming languages have of dynamic type systems. See data type. Usually, such concerns involve correctness, safety, predictability, efficiency, and programmer unfamiliarly. On the first 3 point, classes are often seen as analogous to type in most statically type object-oriented language. They serve that role are and are proposed to provide contractual guidance of their instance and to use of their instances that they have behave in some given fashion. Regarding efficiency, declaring classes simplifies many compiler optimism that allow developing efficient method and instant variable lookup for the self language. Much development time was spent on developing compiling and interpreting technique to improve the performance of prototype based system versus classes based system. Thank you. Here we end the introduction.